we're going to start with a little bit of a clarification on what the whole purpose of this challenge was. And then we're going to start with a short meditation. So, when I first decided to do this, what really resonated with me was the timing, being it around Valentine's Day. And, how we as a society treat these holidays is about someone making us feel really special, right? And you almost feel bad for someone if they don't have that in their life. But really, when it comes to your health, the biggest overlooked factor, and probably one of the most foundational things, the first things you have to develop, is this idea of love for yourself. Okay. And when we don't do that, I don't care what you take, I don't care what else you do, the odds are against you that you'll be successful. So, and it all has to do with the energy that you start everything with, is either a healing energy or it's an energy that keeps you in a state of stress. And as long as that energy is revolving around a stress, that does not stimulate growth. It does not stimulate healing. It does not stimulate recovery. And so just from a foundational perspective, this is why this is so very important and probably one of the hardest things to change. And if you've been going along with this Facebook group, you'll see these comments reappear over and over, like, I don't like myself. I'm not very kind to myself. I've always had to work on this. Yes. And that's what these tools were meant to do, is to make these little commitments during that 5 days to really reaffirm how much you care about yourself. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with a short, I like to say short, but it might take about 8 minutes or so. I've timed it, meditation. And then what we're going to do is review the things we talked about and covered in our week. And then I'm going to go through, some strategies to build your best, how you can create your best day by creating a morning routine. And then I have some other information I'd love to go through as well. So keeping that in mind, let me cue my music. So what I want you to do is just get comfortable. If you're sitting in a chair, you can keep your back straight. You can lean against the chair. You can close your eyes. You can keep your eyes open, but just give yourself the space, give yourself the opportunity. If you're doing this at home or if you're at your office like me, make yourself unavailable for the next hour and a half so you can really learn what you came to learn today. And you don't have any interruptions, and no one bothering you, no one else trying to get your attention. Is that okay? Okay, so everyone ready? So we're going to start with this meditation. And what I'd like you to do is just sit and take a breath. Take a breath in through your nose and breathe that same breath back out through your nose. Now what I want you to do is put one hand on your heart, one hand on your belly. And as you breathe, allow your hand over your heart to actually feel your heartbeat. And just focus your attention onto the beating of your heart. And when you feel it, just say thank you. Say thank you to your heart for all the work it's done today to bring you to this moment. And for all the work it's going to continue to do for you without asking for anything in return. Take another breath in through your nose. And when you breathe in, try to feel your belly move. And when you breathe out, feel your belly fall into your abdomen. Now with your next breath, I want you to recall a moment in your life or an experience where you felt immense gratitude. Maybe it was the birth of a child, bringing home of a pet, an accomplishment at work, celebration of your wedding. Whatever comes to your mind, I want you to visualize that moment. And I want you to bring as many details of that visual memory that you can. So think of the colors, the scenery, your clothes. And I want you to relive that moment. I want you to focus on that feeling. And feel what it feels like to have gratitude in your life, in your body. And once you feel that gratitude, I want you to bring that feeling to the center of your chest under your hand where your heart is. Once you feel that under your hand with your next breath, make that feeling grow into the center of your chest with each inhale. Now, as that sensation gets bigger under your hand, imagine that is a healing energy. And with each breath, you're sending that healing energy to every cell of your body as you expand that sensation. Now, what I would like you to do is visualize a younger version of yourself. This could be a version of you from last week, last month, last year, or from your childhood. And imagine yourself standing directly in front of this younger version of you. And I want you to feel this energy coming from the area of your heart. And I want you to visualize a beam going into the younger version of you from yourself. I want you to feel this loving energy moving from one body to the next. I want you to give that younger version of yourself some of this gratitude. Feel this deep connection to yourself. Really embrace yourself. Now I want you to communicate to your younger version of yourself without any judgment. And I want you to say thank you. Say thank you for the ups and downs. Thank you for all the life lessons. Thank you for the journey. Thank you for not giving up. Now I want you to say, I'm sorry. Sorry for letting you down. Sorry for not believing in you. Sorry for making mistakes. I'm sorry for hurting myself and others. I'm sorry. Now I want you to say, I forgive you. You are only human. We all make mistakes. We can choose to let things go. We don't need to hold on to this pain any longer. I forgive you fully and completely. Let's move forward. Now I want you to look into your eyes and say, I love you. Don't look away. Say, I love you for being you. I love you for who you are. I love you for all your gifts and qualities and all of your imperfections. You are special and unique. I love you. Just hold on to this feeling. Bring your awareness back to your breath. Keep breathing in through your nose and out through your nose. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. You can put your hands down. Okay, how was that? Can anyone hear me?
Yep.
Yeah?
Good.
How did that feel?
Oh, good. It made you concentrate, I guess, on, yeah.
Did it bring up any emotions?
I can't, nothing profound for me, but a warmth maybe.
Sorry?
A warmth.
Warmth? That's good. That's good. How many of us actually say those 3 words to ourselves? I love you. When's the last time you said that to yourself? And this is for everyone, so you can just answer whoever wants to. You don't have to be shy. So in my experience, not very often.
Like never.
Like never, right? And, you know, I remember the first time I did a meditation like this, I was in a room full of people. And when that very specific line came up, and we're all adults, you know, this is a couple years ago, but it was like tears, like all you could hear is people sobbing. Right. And it was very like profound moment in my life where I realized, like, what are we doing wrong? Like, we live every day and we'll give this energy and this love to everyone around us except to ourselves. Right. And I hope that if you gain nothing at all from this, it's that you gain the insight and the willingness to give yourself this. Is that love? Just to say I love you every morning. Okay, so we're going to get started. And what we're going to talk about is what we discussed in this 5-day challenge on day 1, which was creating a loving awareness. And so we talked about very specific things. The first thing we talked about was forgiveness, right? There's a very, very important book written by a Canadian doctor. His name's Gabor Mate. He wrote a book called When the Body Says No. And in this book, his whole idea is that all illness, all suffering comes from emotional trauma. And there is specific emotions that are, at the core of why we get sick. And some of them are anger, guilt, resentment, hate, fear, all these things that are so commonplace, right? If especially, you having another child in the last couple of weeks and having a family makes me realize the conditioning that happens to moms. All the guilt, doesn't matter what it is. It's like guilt that I slept in for 5 minutes, guilt that I didn't do this, and all these things that come passed down into our subconscious mind about how we're supposed to behave. And then all the things that we hold on to from the people who might have wronged us in the past. And what we need to do is, just as much as we need to forgive ourselves, because that's one part of this, building this sense of forgiveness, is to let go. That's why I included this into this meditation, is one of the parts was, I forgive you, right? We only make choices off the information we know of, right? And so when we are presented with new information, we have to forgive ourselves for our past actions. So giving this sense of forgiveness is so important because it can be freeing, right? And usually when we have these relationships where maybe you resent someone for saying something to you that they might not, believe it or not, even know that they offended you or harmed you in any way at all, because they've never even thought about it since that moment in time. But we might have been dealing with it for 5 years still, right? So the only person that is being hurt in all of this when we're holding on to these emotions, these negative emotions, is the person holding on to the emotion, right? So letting these things go and forgiving people and forgiving yourself is a very, very important thing that we need to develop a habit of doing. Then we talked about service, and the idea with service is that, put your intention into how you want to show up, how you want to show up for other people, how you want to show up for yourself. And there's so many little ways you can build this concept of service into your life, right? So whether you're making lunch or breakfast or dinner for your family, and you decide with, with intention that you're going to put the emotion of love into that food. Maybe that means you're going to sing while you make their food. You're going to, talk to them as you're going to love this food. Watch how nicely I grated up your salad and put all these things together for you in the beautiful colors. And when you put that emotion into things, you actually change the quality of the ability of this food, if we're using food as an example, to have an impact on someone's biology, right? In our video, I talked about this experiment that was done in Japan where they would look at water, for example. And when you freeze water and you have someone, focusing negative energy on water, the water never freezes as a perfect crystal. And what happens is it freezes, but it's like a shattered crystal, right? And when you have the opposite emotion, so someone has these loving thoughts about how clear this water is, how clean it is, and how tasty it is, and how refreshing it is, then the water freezes and forms these beautiful, perfect crystal structures, right? And so the energy that we carry into that or around that water affects the water so much that it changes the structure. And this is really important to understand because we are mostly water. Your children are mostly water. And so how much can we change them by thinking about the words we use, by thinking about the intentions we have, the energy that we hold when we're in their space, right? And so thinking about these things and just being aware of it is a simple way where we just say, hey, like, these are some of the things we have to talk about. What is this doing? Okay. So one of the things we want to do is, as you build this ability to serve, so, creating this challenge is my way of serving, right? I have this concept of just show up for people, don't judge them, give openly what I can, and that's my way of serving. You know, a lot of people would, when I put these things together, they would say, why are you giving all this information away? And my answer to them is always like, why am I not? Like, there's no gatekeeper on information, right? And information is just, you know, the tip of the iceberg, because the information on its own isn't going to do anything until you apply it. And so we have to go further than just giving people information, because the information is endless. Now with the internet age, you can find, you know, you could do your PhD online at home, right? And probably that's the way it's being done now. So think about the way you serve people, your community, your family, yourself. Okay, always in those contexts, not in terms of just others. If you're leaving yourself out of how you're serving, then you're missing a big component of this first day one, which was creating that loving awareness. And then the next part we talked about was self-love, which again takes me back to this meditation. This is going to tie through this whole review.
Hello.
With self-love, what we need to pay attention to is your self-talk. Now, if you guys don't mind, what I would like to know is, before we started this challenge, there was an exercise that I asked everyone to do, which was to create your why. Write down and bring clarity to your why you were going to do this challenge. What is it that was motivating you to take the steps to improve your life, right? Does anyone want to share what they wrote down? Anyone at all? So, you know, yep, go ahead.
Oh, somebody else. Yeah. Just improvement physically with some pain, and I feel like it's yeah, I mean that partially, and improving sleep. If there was any way of overall health, then that would affect sleep and the way I felt every day.
Okay, how do I say your name?
Maya.
Maya? Okay. So that's good. But what I would ask you to look at is, so that's kind of what your goal would be, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So to figure out your why, what you have to do, what I would ask you is, why do you have to be successful at that goal?
Well, it would improve the quality of my life.
Why do you need that quality of your life?
Feel more satisfied and content.
Awesome. Okay, so now you can go deeper and deeper, which I think if you were to build on that eventually you'll get to a very, so one of the suggestions I had made was make your why bigger than you, right? So for me, my why is the health of my children, not at this moment in time. Yes, that matters to me. But what I never wanted for them, this is a thought that came to me right before, like right after I knew we were going to have children, was that I didn't want them to have my life. So I didn't want them at 30 years old to be going, what the hell have I done? You know, I've spent, $150,000 on my school and I can't figure out why I can't control my bowel movements. Right? And so for me, the why wasn't my own health. The why was, if I don't fix this, I'm never going to be in a position to have them avoid these same problems. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you always want to make your why something that's very powerful, because the reality is, just being really honest, we're pretty good liars when it comes to what we are saying to ourselves. Right? And it's that idea, like if someone goes on a diet and they would say a cheat meal, right? That's just a nice way of saying I just lied to myself and said it's okay,
Mm.
right? And so because we have those kind of built-in fail safes and those habits, what keeps you on track is your why. And so just to say, I want less pain, it's not a very strong why,
Mm.
right? Because, well, you would have to look at like what action steps have we done in the past, or are we willing to take going forward? And sometimes that's not a big motivator. It might be on the days you have a lot of pain, but on the days you have manageable pain, is it a motivator, right? So it's
Right.
something to think about more long term. So part of building that self-love and that creating that why is we have to pay attention to our self-talk. And this is where things can really, really shift, because your self-talk is everything, especially if your love language is affirmations. And if you don't give yourself these affirmations or these positive compliments, and that's your love language, you create this big disconnect. And what happens is, when we have these disconnects, you start to feel less and less fulfilled, less loved. You feel like you're not safe. And that starts to resonate through, remember, that energy concept of what happens if you are just water and you had that emotion. It's every cell gets affected because every cell is mostly water. Okay, so your biology starts to change based off that. Then we talked about being kind to yourself, expressing your gifts. Every one of us has a gift. The problem is we think your gift has to be almost like superhero like, right? You have to have a cape on almost to appreciate it. But your gift might just be your ability to listen and not judge. It might be how closely and how tightly you hug someone, right? But we don't honor these things. And so we have to be aware of these strengths that we have and be willing to express them. Like when I meet people face to face, like I love to hug people. And sometimes when you meet someone who's not comfortable with those situations, you can tell, but if when you I learned this from someone at a conference once, that there's actually a correct way to hug. And I didn't know this. I just knew I liked hugging people. But it's when you hug, one thing you have to do is actually hold a hug. And they say there's research that shows you can measure a hormonal change or a state of change in women if you hold a hug longer than 30 seconds. And so what they're referring to is you can see cortisol levels drop after 30 seconds, which is really important. Now think of how many people hug for 30 seconds,
Mm.
right? Barely anyone. And then when you hug, you're meant to place your heart over the person's heart who you're hugging. And you can almost feel their heartbeat against yours, right? It's this idea of you're connected, which is a pretty, wonderful concept when you think of why we hug, right? Is that whole connection, that support, letting someone know you're there, right? Now, one of the other things we talked about was gratitude, counting our blessings throughout the day. And gratitude is something that we all have to work on. The key to building a sense of gratitude is having the ability to be aware of your present moment, not living your life by what you're supposed to be or where you're supposed to be in the next 5 years. Instead, being aware of what you're doing at this moment in time. And then realizing that if very simple things didn't happen in this moment, you wouldn't have that next 5 years anyways. Right? So thinking about in this meditation, we talked about just feel your heartbeat and say thank you to your heart. Right? When you think of the simple things in your life, right, then you can build a sense of gratitude. The biggest struggle I see with people is that they think they have to have this monumentous event happen in their life to express any gratitude at all, right? They have to walk on water. And the reality is that's not going to happen. And life is built of all these little wonderful, joyous moments that are only going to be there if your awareness is allowing them to come into your life in terms of you're recognizing them, right? Because they're still happening either way, right? Your heart's still going to beat for you either way. But do you appreciate it? That's the difference. And so when I work with people, one of the things we give them is a gratitude journal. And it's a rule that the gratitude journal has to be written in twice a day, in the morning and at night. It takes 5 minutes. And when people start doing this, what you start to see is, and I hope that you are doing this in this challenge, what you start to see is when you change your morning energy, that energy you carry into every experience throughout the day. So when you say you go into a work meeting, or you go into maybe your children's room to wake them up in the morning, you carry that energy into that experience. And so the experience is different because of the way you are thinking. Whereas you can imagine if you wake up and you're mumbling under your breath, I can't believe it's morning already. This is ridiculous. I hate my life. What's that energy? What is that next experience going to be? Probably not pleasant, right? And that's down to us to really build gratitude. We have to bring our mind to just what we are doing. And so the mantra that I like to use, and I mentioned in the video, is be here now. And really what you want to do is everything that you start doing. So when you logged on to join this masterclass, the mantra should have been, just be here now. Don't worry about what time it's over. Just be here now. When you eat, just repeat it to yourself. Be here now. When you're going to read a story to your children at night, just say, be here now. Just as a reminder of where your mind should be, right? Where should your phone be? Where should your computer be? Where should all the distractions be? Away from you, okay? Then the last thing we talked about on day one was compassion. And compassion is really important because this helps us change our perspective. And it helps us get out of this mindset of judging people, because we all can do it, right? And when you have compassion for other people, right, what you'll be able to do is build some compassion for yourself. And that's the most important thing, is if we don't build compassion with ourselves, you're never going to build this sense of love, sense of self-love, right? And so the important thing is when you decided to do this challenge, or whether you decide to do something for yourself in the future, your starting energy is everything. And so you don't want to be in a position where you are making the choice to do something based off of fear, right? And so I'll give you an example. Someone who might have a really scary diagnosis with their health, and they basically have this idea, well, if I don't do this now, I'm screwed. That's a very stressful place to start a health journey, and you're almost going to lose 100% of the time. But if you start your journey from the place of, you know what, I've felt poorly for so long that I deserve to feel better. I deserve to put my energy into myself to get my dream life back, or the life I always wanted. When you just think about that, two scenarios, which one has hope involved in it? Which one is more optimistic? The second one, right? And so we have to build that compassion for ourselves so we can share it with others. And what you start to realize is everybody has a story. And when you start asking yourself, whether it's someone who's, homeless on the street, and someone might say, well, they're homeless because they're a drug addict, or they're lazy, or something like that, but we don't know their story. What if someone is on the street because they're escaping an abusive home where someone's molesting them? And to them, being in the cold is better than having that happen, right? When we view other people with that level of compassion, it starts to carry over to how we view ourselves. And guess what that allows us to do? Build more forgiveness. And when you have these things, you start rolling the ball in terms of taking action. That's why this first day is so, so very important, because if you do each of these things, you're willing to take that first step now, right? And if you don't build these things, if you think this is trivial, you're not going to take the next step. I can bet most of you, like if you're here on this call, then you probably did take these steps. I can also guarantee you that people who didn't show up today, there's a percentage of them where it was a timing issue for sure, because it's the evening, middle of the week. But then there's people who didn't do anything at all. And that's really sad to me, because it just shows you that that level of self-love is just not there. It's not, might never be there. Okay, so then what I want to share with you is in the program that we run with our clients and our patients in our office. It's called the Inspired Living Metabolic and Lifestyle Reset. So what this challenge was, like a very small sneak peek into the things we teach in our 10-week program, where we help people just basically get their best life back, whether that means weight loss, energy, pain, all these different things, happiness especially. We start with the cores of like the ideas that I kind of gave the seeds to you in this challenge, and then we build on them, right? So every week we coach these individuals for 10, every week there's an hour of coaching. And then there's about an hour or a half hour at the end of every week for a live question and answer period. And it's done in a group setting online. And so what I wanted to show you is the things that I'm teaching you, look how profound these changes are in someone's life. Okay, so this is one of the people who was in our group. And what they said was, I've made significant gains in both my physical and mental health. I found that as my physical health improved, for example, getting better sleep, reduced inflammation, joint pain going down, more energy, and better mental clarity, then my emotional state skyrocketed to feelings of hope for the future, less anxiety, and generally feeling happier. These gains were a huge gift as I had been suffering from chronic illnesses for the past 6 years. The effects of this had left me feeling quite helpless. For me, the game changer was when I started getting better sleep so that my body could finally start repairing and restoring itself. The biggest takeaway has been that this type of change is so empowering that once on this positive trajectory, you want to stay on this path and never go back to the way you were before. This program offers a safe and supportive environment in which one can make these positive changes a reality. I'm excited for anyone who makes the decision to feel healthier and happier. It is so worth it. So I'll give you a little background on this case. This individual, when I first met them, the first thing they said was such a common thing I hear, and I already mentioned it. If this doesn't work, I don't know what I'll do. Right? And so I had to kind of, put my hands up and say, hey, that's a lot of pressure that you're putting on me. And what I wanted her to say is just give yourself the chance, right? Don't make this a do or die thing. Just put your best foot forward, take away all your expectations, and you might surprise yourself. And so that's where she started this from. And what you have to realize is 6 years of her life, she had basically lost her ability to work. Her kids were growing up while she slept. So most of the day she would lie in bed because of her pain and because of her chronic fatigue. She had spent 6 years traveling across the US trying to get help. So spending money, traveling, getting therapies, getting treatments from all these so-called experts on the condition she was diagnosed with. So one of the things she was told she had was Lyme disease. And when she started to just make these subtle changes, when she started working on herself, when she started getting rid of this idea of all I will ever be is someone who has Lyme disease, her whole life started changing. So within 4 weeks, her energy level started going up to the point where she stopped napping during the day. Her sleep started improving. And then by 6 weeks, she had no more pain, right? By the end of that 10 weeks, she was hiking every single day with her 2 teenage daughters. And so think about how you can move from complete hopelessness, losing your career. And this person was a teacher. So in my mind, I think most teachers, it's a profession of passion, right? And we can kind of see it when we've had to like teach our own kids. It's not my strength. I don't want to do it. So bless the people who want to do it for me. Um, but she had to give that all away because she couldn't even show up for it anymore. Right. So I want you to realize that these things that most of our society will tell you are trivial, this is where the magic is. Okay. So let's go on to day 2. So day 2 was about autonomic pairing. Okay. And one of the things that what this means to me is that every function that you want your body to do, we have to consider what state of our nervous system enhances that function or turns that function off. Okay, so when that comes to our nervous system, we're talking about our autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system is the part of our nervous system that controls all the functions that we never have to think about, right? So setting your heart rate, your blood pressure, your blood sugar levels, and all these different things. These are things we don't think about. They just get taken care of, right? But remember how we talked about, how we eat and these things. But when you're pairing, when you're doing autonomic pairing, you have to think of what function do I want and which side of this nervous system will enhance it. So we have the parasympathetic side of this autonomic nervous system, which is your fight or flight response. Now, this fight or flight response signals to your body to upregulate everything for survival. And so what that means is going to push all your blood to your muscles. Not only that, it's going to shift how the blood flows all in through your brain to what's called your midbrain or your reptilian brain. And that is how we think reflexively. So there's no thinking involved. It's reflex. It's reactionary, right? So think of if a car was sliding towards you on a winter's day and you're on the sidewalk and you're thinking, why the hell is there a car on the sidewalk? You don't think of which way to jump or how to get out of the way. Your body's moving before you know what to do, or you stand still and get run over, right? So this is our parasympathetic nervous system. Now, what we have to understand is when we are stimulating our parasympathetic nervous system, you're turning off the other branch of this nervous system, which is called that was your sympathetic nervous system. You're turning off your parasympathetic nervous system. Your parasympathetic nervous system is how you heal. It's for stimulating digestion. It's for stimulating regeneration of your tissues, for reproduction, all these things that are vital to creating a healthy life. Okay. It doesn't mean that you should never turn on your stress response or your sympathetic nervous system. What it means is that we're supposed to go in and out of that state very quickly, right? So you only go into that state while there's a bear chasing you. When the bear's gone, you should go back to healing, back to digesting your food, back to sleeping, back to down regulating your immune system. Okay. But what happens is we tend to live in a state of chronic stress. And so the signal to stay in a state of stress doesn't go away. So our body keeps taking away functions that we need, like healing, like digesting your food. And this is why people don't heal, because the nervous system is saying you can't heal. That's a waste of our time because there's a bear attacking us right now, right? So that healing has to come when you're safe. And so you can see how if we don't create that safe space by creating that self-love and that loving awareness, you see how that's going to impact your nervous system too, right? And that's going to shift you in a state of stress. And then right away, you're doomed. And so this is why it's so very important to understand that every function we want, we have to decide what part of the nervous system is going to enhance that function. So when you want to eat, you have to be calm, right? You have to get rid of all the stressors, get rid of your phone, get rid of your computer, get rid of the news, get rid of the TV, get rid of everything, and just be present in the moment of eating, right? And if you want to sleep, you can't just stay up late at night watching Netflix and then decide that, hey, it's 12 o'clock, so I'm going to go to sleep, and at 12:05, I should be having deep, restful sleep. You'd probably get more deep sleep if you spent your time throwing your change into the fountain at the mall, just wishing for it, because you haven't signaled to create deep sleep, right? And we went over those things, and I'll go over that in day 4. So part of this autonomic pairing is identifying the things, people, places that trigger you and understanding why. Okay. My biggest tip to you would be that when you're asking why these people or places or things trigger you, is understand that everything is a mirror of yourself, right? So if you know someone who really gets under your skin, typically what that means is it's not them that's the issue. There's something about their behavior that is a reflection of something we have to work on still, right? So if I see someone on the road driving around like a madman and it makes me angry, it's not their driving that makes me angry. It's what I'm really getting angry at is that I still drive like a madman. So I have to fix my behavior first, right? And so always ask why with the understanding of how is this a reflection of me? What do I need to still change so that this behavior that I see out there doesn't bother me anymore? Okay. So you want to be an observer of your thoughts, your emotions, and your breath. So when it comes to your thoughts, one of the things that I think is a useful tool is to ask yourself when you're thinking about something that could be about yourself. Let's say it's your negative self-thought, that negative self-talk. Use this as a guideline or as a tool. Would you repeat the things you're thinking about or saying to yourself to a child? Any child, even a complete stranger, you've never met them before, but you see a little child walking up your street. Would you get on your knees, eye level, and say the things that you're saying here to them? And if the answer is no, you have no business saying it to yourself, right? That's a really easy way to put that into perspective. Now, what we also want to do is be in the moment. So we talked about this already. There's a saying that people who are depressed live in the past, people who are anxious live in the future. And so it goes back to that mantra, be here now, keep yourself just in the present moment, right? Whatever you are doing, just be in that specific time, right? And for me, saying that as a mantra, just be here now, slowing it down, right? So I might even just take a breath and say one part of it, be here now, right? Breaking it down, pausing, creating a pause before I do something or while I'm doing it is a big way that you can create that awareness to move from what I have to get done tomorrow, what's on my to-do list, to what am I doing right now? Okay. So then we talked about the 6 C's of digestion. So, choosing your food is really important. And I went through the ways you want to structure those choices. So you want to look at, how much of your diet is organic, right? How about how much of your food, in terms of organic, not everything has to be organic, but I posted a list of our clean 15 dirty dozen. And what you want to do is follow that. What I mean by the clean 15 dirty dozen is if you can't eat something that's organic, you make sure it's on the clean 15. If you don't have the option to eat organic, you avoid the dirty dozen. You just never buy it, never eat it. So things like strawberries and apples are some of the most highly contaminated sources of food with pesticides. And this will destroy your health very, very quickly. And it's doing it to our society right now. Then we talked about chewing. How much do you have to chew your food? And what I recommended is 25 to 35 times for every mouthful. Okay. If you bypass your teeth, there is no other place in your body to chew your food. Some people are under the impression that if I chew it twice, it's going to go into my stomach. The stomach acid is going to dissolve everything. That's not actually what happens. Your stomach acid works on what it can touch. So it's all about surface area, right? If I swallow a ball of, let's say I bite an apple and I just swallow the whole piece, well, all I can do is work on the outside of that piece of apple. It's meant to work on a broken down, soft baby food texture because there's a lot of surface area there. The acid can get in there and break up all the enzymes and do all these wonderful things, but it can't do it if we don't chew our food. And once you're past here, you have no teeth in your esophagus, no teeth in your stomach, no teeth in your colon. So what happens? You miss out on all those nutrients. And basically, even if you're buying organic food, the best food in the world, you're basically throwing it out and flushing it down the toilet. Okay. Then we talked about calming down when you eat. Why? Again, this goes back to that. Think of this autonomic pairing. What are you trying to signal? Right. Then we talked about gratitude during your meal, which is how you connect to your food. Right. And then we talked about at the end of your day, or at the end of this whole digestive process, when you go to the bathroom and maybe have a bowel movement, you check to see, how good of a job did you do that day, right? If you see undigested food in your stool, you probably have a lot of work to improve on, right? If you see that your bowel movement is very little of a bowel movement and maybe little pebbles, then you probably have a lot to do in terms of water intake. So there's all these things that looking at our bowel movement will teach us about the actions we had that day. And it's crazy. It sounds crazy, but the when you start investing your time into these things and you start chewing properly, you increase your water intake, your bowel movement changes really quick, right? And if you think of it, one of the most common complaints I see in my office is chronic constipation, right? And you should be able to predict what's their stress level. Those people have super high amounts of stress. And so it makes sense, right? One of the things you have to understand is your body never makes a mistake, never ever makes a mistake. And what it does instead is it um, creates the outcome of whatever you're doing. It's always the right outcome. So if you're constipated and you're stressed, of course you're going to be constipated, because what did we say happens in a state of stress? You turn your digestive tract off. So it's not moving anything through it, right? So it totally makes sense that that's the case. So what do we have to fix? Do you fix your gut? Do you fix your digestive tract? Or do you fix your state? You fix your state. You got to turn the power back on to your digestive tract. Then it can do something, okay? Then here's another message we got from someone in our program. And what I wanted you to look at is just be aware of the state that you want to create. And so this all goes back to this sense of autonomic pairing. So this person, what they said is they finally hit the 30-pound weight loss mark this morning. It has been a challenge as I hit a road bump along the way as I got off track after my trip. So for a long while there, the scale wasn't budging and I was getting frustrated. And this is the important part where they say I hunkered down and I'm back on track now. It seems to be on a roll, even while I go through a super stressful work environment. Challenge accepted just shows to go that anything is possible if you commit and do the work. So why this is important is because the environment didn't change for this individual. The work was still a super stressful work environment, but she got rid of the reasoning or the excuse that that's why she couldn't succeed. So she changed her perspective of her work environment. And then that work environment was no longer the thing that was keeping her in a state of stress and keeping her weight from coming off, right? So creating these shifts and these changes, that's where healing is going to take place. It's very, very simple. Either you're in a state of stress or in your state of healing. You can't be in both at the same time. It's not the way things work, okay? So when we go to day 3, we talked about increasing your water intake, right? Having a liter of water before you eat or do anything else in the morning. Now, you don't have to just stand there until you're done drinking 1 liter of water. But what you want to do is meet yourself where you are. If you don't even have 3 cups of water a day, then you might just start with 1 cup of water in the morning and move it to 2 and move it to 3. Give yourself the time to be successful. Don't place yourself on this, I have to have 1 liter, and you fail on day 1. Guess what you're not going to do on day 2? You probably won't even try, right? So the rule is always meet yourself where you are. Some people have, believe it or not, 8 glasses of water a day. That still might not be enough for them though, because if they're having also 4 cups of coffee a day, they're still falling short of how much they need to drink, okay? So one of the other things we talked about with a narrowed feeding window is that you have to reduce the window, or what we call a feeding window, into 8 hours. So this is where we talked about intermittent fasting. And what we wanted you to do is eat 12 to 8. And after 8 p.m., not to eat or snack on anything except drinking water. And so one of the things that came up a lot was cravings. And what do cravings really mean? So people will that cravings are a sign that you're hungry. And usually a craving is a sign that you're getting stressed. So a lot of the times you can take away by working on what you're doing. So get out of that state of stress. So it might be, a short meditation or a breathing exercise or prayer or whatever, and drinking more water, right? And when you drink water when you're having a craving, what you'll notice is the cravings start to disappear. You're not hungry anymore. Okay. Then we talked about why we have to stop eating 3 hours before bed. And this is because to set yourself up for deeper sleep, we have to look at where our energy is going. You can't have your energy expenditure at nighttime going to digesting your food. It has to go to healing. These are two energy demanding processes. And so if you have a gap between when you're in bed and your last meal, making it 3 hours, that gives you enough time to turn off that digestive process so that when you sleep, your energy is not being spent on food. Your energy is being spent on, let's lower inflammation. Let's create a healing effect. Let's get deeper sleep so we can lower our cortisol and do all these wonderful things that takes place during your sleep. Only if you get into a deep sleep state, right? So think of it, your energy as a pizza, right? And if you have a whole pizza, a large pizza, and you have 3 people with you, that's a lot of slices of pizza for each person, right? And if that pizza represents your energy and the people are the processes that need to be done, you have a lot of energy to do those 3 things. Now, let's say we add 50 people who need some of that pizza or that energy, 50 processes, right? How much energy is going to go to each one? Very, very little. So nothing actually gets done. This is why we want to take away some of these things. This is why removing food for a large chunk of your day actually makes you feel more energetic, right? It's counterintuitive because most people say, well, I've got to eat every 2 hours. If you got to eat every 2 hours, you're almost a diabetic, right? Your blood sugar has big, big problems. Your insulin sensitivity is disastrous. Okay, so again, but you have to meet yourself where you are. No one's going to be perfect in the beginning. It's growth, it's movement. Okay, so then we talked about eating organic, which I went over that as well, and the concept of eating fresh fiber first at each meal. Now, there's certain things that this allows you to do. One is you get a ton of enzymes. Okay, in your fiber, there's lots of digestive enzymes, and your body wants these things to help you break down your food better. The other thing is it has a huge impact on your microbiome. If you haven't heard this term before, think of the word probiotics. A probiotic is a bacteria that you're putting into your body to enhance your microbiome in some way. So the microbiome is the collection of bacteria that lives inside you. Now you have many microbiomes. You have your gut, your mouth, your eye, your skin, you have reproductive area, you have every area has its own microbiome, right? And when we eat more fibrous foods, more fresh vegetables, what happens is we feed these bacteria very different types of fibers. And guess what these fibers do is they allow different species of bacteria to grow. And what we know through research is people who have very diverse microbiomes in terms of how many different species they are and lots of each type of species, that reflects someone who is healthier than someone who has a very narrow diversity. So there's no diversity at all. They might have 5 or 6 species and tons of them. And then what happens is where there's the lack of species, pathogenic species come in. That means species that cause or illnesses. So things like yeast will grow in, parasites will creep in, worms will creep in, other bacteria that are harmful will start to take over the real estate that's not being used. So just give me a sec because I see some question and answers. Does coffee wreck your fast? So this is from an anonymous attendee. No, coffee does not wreck your fast unless you're putting something in it. So just black coffee does not wreck your fast. It's a very good question. Can you go over what your meals should consist of and what are the best plant-based proteins? So let me see if we have time to talk about that at the end. And then there's another question here. How do you forgive someone who has wronged you, hurt you so bad? What does that actually mean? Um, well, I think you have a lot to unravel there. If someone's hurt you or wronged you so bad, I think the only place you can forgive that person is from building a sense of compassion. And maybe it's looking, or whether it's true or not, it's not the point. It's, does it help you to forgive is the point. So you might have to look at this from the point of view of, how was this person hurt or wronged in their life? And were they just playing out what was going to play out? Meaning, it's almost like a computer program, right? If you put in this input, are they just acting out what was going to happen because this was done to them, type of thing? Okay. And that's not making an excuse for anyone, for sure. You don't want to make excuses for anyone. But like I said, my concern or your concern shouldn't be whether it's truthful. It should be, does it help you move away from it? Okay. So we're going to have some time to answer some questions at the end. But I want to make sure we get through this. So I shared this with you because this is also someone who went through our metabolic reset program. And again, I'm going to ask you to just imagine losing your health to the point where for 10 years you suffer. Okay, you suffer so badly that you gain almost 200 pounds. Your energy levels completely diminished. You have allergies to seemingly everything. Your face is swollen to the point where it's painful. And then to get yourself back, not for a lack of effort, this individual spent over $100,000 US getting treatments at specific, specialty hospitals over the course of a year. Not over 10 years, that was spent in a year. Okay. And think of how, like, even after that, what astonishes me is like someone still has the desire to try again, right? Like, I don't know if I would be completely defeated after that and just think like nothing's going to work. And so this person reached out to me, believe it or not, after seeing the other person who I mentioned had Lyme disease. This person also had Lyme disease. And so when they saw that this person got better, she basically said, I've been on the fence about doing this with you for so long, but I've lost all hope. And so I didn't want to do anything. And until you shared that story, you kind of made me think, well, maybe I should try this. Maybe this is the right thing. And so what she says in her email is, I'm doing very good. Sorry that I didn't get back to you last week. Very busy babysitting both grandkids. I'm available all day. So what I was looking for was to get an update from her. And at this time, she had lost something like 37 pounds. And at this point now, she's out in Florida, I think. I think she is down 56 pounds. She has no more chronic pain. She's exercising all the time. She's biking and walking and doing all these things. And why I wanted to share this with you is because of this line right here. She was very busy babysitting both grandkids. When she started this program, I had to meet her to give her her starter kit, which has all the material and supplies that each person needs to succeed in the program, to follow through week by week. And she was so tired, she couldn't come to the front door. Her husband had to talk to me and take the thing, and she slowly made her way to the front door. And I was really worried at this point because I was like, why are you not responding? Are you doing nothing? And my concern was like, how can I help you? And sometimes if you don't get any feedback, you're worried that maybe someone's fallen completely off the wagon type thing, right? And so when I got this email back, I was like, look at the change. She was finally living the life she wanted, because one of her big complaints, or her motivators, her why, was she wanted to be the grandmother to her grandkids that she thought they deserved. She wanted to be full of energy, to get on her knees, to play with them, to walk them to the park, just to have the energy to babysit them. Right? So her why was bigger than her pain. Her why was bigger than the things that she was suffering from. She saw them as why she needed to have the strength to stay committed to what she was doing. And so now she's living her life. Like I said, she's down over 56 pounds. She has no pain anymore. Her energy is through the roof. She goes for bike rides. She walks. She's taking care of her grandkids. She has the life that she wanted. And it took just taking a step. It took getting rid of this hopelessness and saying, you know what? Despite all those things I didn't do these things. And she did it. I'd like to take the credit, but at the end of the day, I can only take credit for the way my life feels. Yes, I teach these principles and I help implement them, but if no one implements them, then there's nothing much I can do. So with day 4, we talked about rest and recovery. And one of the things that's mentioned on your check sheet is sleep is sacred. And this is how you have to look at your sleep. This is something that we can no longer just willy-nilly give away to everyone else. Okay. So what some of the concepts we talked about is no screens 2 hours before bed. And you can see I'm still wearing my blue light blocking glasses for nighttime because I have a light shining on my face because the lighting here is really, really bad. And it would just look like I have really dark eyes, which I probably do because I'm sleeping like 4 to 5 hours a night with this new baby. But I want to do everything I can to make sure, even if I only have 4 hours of sleep, that most of that 4 hours is deep. So I'm actually getting some rest. Okay. And I'm not digging a hole that I can't climb out of. Now, the reason why we had to avoid those screens is because that blue light destroys melatonin. So the whole point of the rest and recovery part is to understand, why is melatonin important? What does it signal your body to do? And how are we destroying it through these everyday behaviors that we think are completely harmless because everybody else does it, right? And so the rule that we have to live by is, if you want the life that everyone else has, don't change a thing because you're already there, right? We have a population that over 50% of our children and adults are suffering from at least one chronic disease. And so if you don't want that life, then you have to be willing to do what 90% of our population isn't willing to do. And that means stop gauging what you need to do based off of what your friends are doing, right? So if you have that clarity of like, I don't want to feel tired all the time, then you can't do the things that everyone else is doing, like just watching Netflix all night. Okay. We talked about the importance of shutting off your screens, eliminating overhead lighting 2 hours before bed, as the sun goes down, and replacing those lights with lamps and warm bulbs. And I think I saw on someone's camera a salt lamp. And so very good for implementing that and using it. Okay. We talked about getting to bed by 10 p.m. and trying to shoot for 6 to 7 hours of sleep, 7 to 8 hours of sleep as a minimum. Okay. Not everyone can control that, but you want to try. And then one really, really important thing was to get morning sunlight exposure directly in your eyes. No glasses, no glass in between the sun and your eyes. And the reason that is important is because that is a signal that actually starts melatonin production. And so if you start sunlight exposure in the morning and you start signaling to your brain to start making more and more melatonin as the day goes on, then when we get to nighttime, when it's bedtime, that level of melatonin will be high, which signals to your body that when you go to sleep, get deep sleep. And then what we wanted to our goal during the day was stop doing things that break down melatonin, which all revolves around light. Blue light specifically will break down your melatonin, especially from the screens. And that's why it's so important to limit screen time, right? If you look at what our kids are doing for the last year, working, young children on their computer, it's destroying their brains. There's no way around it. Does not matter what anyone tells me. I've read the research, especially on a child, their brains are 10 times more sensitive to the blue light and EMF radiation that comes out of our devices than an adult brain, right? So there's no way they should be at home on a computer doing school. Now, when we talk about sleep, the rules were you have to make sure your room is very, very dark, right? So that if you went like this, you couldn't see your hand. Get it cold. And one of the things that I would recommend is if you drink water before you go to bed, make sure it's room temperature or almost the same temperature as your body. So it's almost warm. If you're drinking cold water before you go to bed, you actually are ramping up your metabolism because your body wants to warm it up to body temperature. And so that can wake you up. And that's always been a little trick of mine. If I'm driving home from, a party or a friend's house or something like that, and I'm tired, and usually that means everyone else in the family is already sleeping, what I would do is drink really cold water or just hold ice in my mouth. And when you do that, it wakes you up. Okay. So something that's really, really important to do is invest in your sleep. Remember, it is sacred, and you have to treat it that way. Okay. Then we talked about on the 5th day, actually, let me just see here. Let me change this slide. So again, this is someone who is straight out of our program. And what she said is, "Hi, Satdeep, where do I begin? This program is amazing and most of all, easy. You were right. I did love it. I have made so many life-changing habits through these last 10 weeks. I feel better. My sleep is better. My mood is better. I have more energy. The best part is I have been able to lose 22 pounds and almost 25 inches overall. I'm going to keep going with the fasting mornings and continue to keep grains and breads and dairy out of her diet. I'm excited to be able to add back some fats. And thank you so much for creating this program and coaching us through these life changes." And, as a little update, this person at this time had lost 22 pounds. And by the time she probably was another month out of the program, she was down to like 36 pounds. And so what you have to realize is if you make these changes, healing will continue to take place. Your body will keep pushing towards health. And so she didn't change anything. She wasn't even working with me anymore. And she's still losing weight by creating the habits that lead to losing weight, because that was her big thing. So now, again, I'll give you a little background story on this individual. You might think it's about weight, but she was very, very much in a dark, dark place in terms of her mental health. Right. So the weight had a big play on it because her family never accepted her and always made her feel like she wasn't worthy of their love because she was always a chubby kid. Right. And so when you hear these really, really sad stories and someone can barely get the story out without, bursting into tears, you can imagine how good they feel to actually start changing the way they see themselves in the mirror. And so her first step wasn't to lose 22 pounds to then love herself. It was, I love myself enough to actually put my energy into myself, to start changing what I see in the mirror before I see any change happening to my body. And when she started doing that, she started losing weight because guess what? She was already working out and doing boot camps, right? She was doing that for 6 months. And in fact, she was gaining weight during that time. So look what happens when in this program, we don't have anyone exercise at all besides walking. And so you'd have to wonder like, well, how the heck are they getting these results, losing 22 pounds, 36 pounds with no exercise when the exercise wasn't helping them? The reality is because if you've lost your resilience to respond to stress, exercise becomes the stressor that makes the whole system crash. And that means more weight gain. Right? The analogy I like to use is imagine yourself in a glass tank and it's filling with water. And this water is symbolic for the stress in your life. Okay. Now imagine you're standing on your tippy toes and the water is right here because you have a very stressful life. And that means you're stressed, you're not sleeping, your joints hurt because you're inflamed, you're depressed, you're anxious, all of these things that are so commonplace, right? Now someone comes along and says, I got the solution for you. All you need to do is exercise 7 days a week or 4 days a week for an hour and a half a night, right? So you do what you're told. And what happens is when people start exercising like this, it's like someone's taking a giant bucket and pouring more water into this tank and it ends up going over your head. You're going to drown. Until we drain this tank, you can't add that much stress, right? So the exercise will come, but when it's the right time. When we've built enough resilience so that the exercise, it doesn't become a negative stressor that actually impacts us negatively more than it helps positively. Okay. Okay, so day 5, we talked about joyful movement. So Joyful movement is just like how you move and express yourself. How does someone know you're in a good mood? Because you're dancing in the kitchen while you cook, or you're singing, or you're doing something that you just feel like top of the world, right? I use this picture because my 2-year-old loves Peppa Pig. And, every morning when we take the dog out, she wants to go out with me. And so in the fall and in the spring, she would always put on her rain boots, and the first thing she would look for is muddy puddles. And every time she would get to a muddy puddle, she's like, "Daddy, can I jump in muddy puddles?" And I would say, "Yeah, go jump in the muddy puddles." And the look on her face is just pure joy, right? The simple things that kids find pure joy in because their imagination is so vivid. And when I looked at this little girl, I was like, that's exactly the same face as my 2-year-old when she's jumping in these muddy puddles. So for her joyful movement is jumping in muddy puddles. And guess what? When we do something where she gets excited, she jumps up and down. Just like if someone were to win the lottery. I always think of The Price is Right. Remember when people were in the crowd and Bob Barker would be, "Come on down," and everyone's jumping up and down, super excited? Well, that's joyful movement. And so what you have to think about is, how do you move when you're super excited about something? Do more of that. So in my older girls, what we started doing was dancing. They love to dance. They're in competitive dance and doing all those wonderful things. But we started playing like music from, our youth, our childhood, for me and my wife, like 80s dance music, like Whitney Houston. And then we would play it for them, and they would sing it really loudly and dance and try to mimic what was going on in the music videos. And they would have just a blast, right? And what this joyful movement did is whatever stress was going on in their life, they just shook it right out of them. And what a beautiful way to end a day, on that feeling where you're kind of like breathless and you're excited and you feel good and you're happy and you're laughing because you've been falling over each other, and you're lying on the carpet on the floor, and then you finally get into bed and it's like, that was awesome. I had so much fun. That is the whole point. When you do joyful movement, it's movement that brings out your inner child, right? Get rid of the judgment. Is anybody looking? Who cares? Right? When you're singing in your car and then you realize, oh no, that person's been watching me, and you get all embarrassed and red in the face. Who cares? You're never going to see them again. Who cares? Just keep doing it. So it's also movement that allows you to express yourself. We talked about dance, yoga, Tai Chi. And when you do this, it brings all of your awareness into this moment. It's that be here now, but through movement. Okay, so it's very, very powerful. And what you want to keep in mind is this movement should not bring on a lot of stress. It should not create stress because the impact of the movements is too much. Okay, so you want it to be gentle. And one of the things you have to understand about joint health is mobility is the key to health. If you do not move your joints enough, you actually down-regulate genes that express health. Okay, so movement is the key to life. It's the more you move through the full range of motion of your joints, you turn on genes that make you healthier and happier. Okay, so keep those things in mind. Now, this is another individual from our metabolic and lifestyle reset. So in this email, this is around 6 weeks where she's sharing her before. This was day 1. This is at the end of 6 weeks. And you can see it's a very dramatic transformation. So she lists off all the things that she was doing before we started working with each other. So she's actually a pharmacist. And one of the things she mentioned is that she tried antidepressants, which didn't make her feel good. So she took herself off. She weaned herself off because she knew how to do it. She was doing boot camps every morning of the week, from Monday to Friday at 4:30 in the morning for over 6 months. And she didn't lose a pound. And look what she writes. She's like, "I love to work out, but my body and mind was so tired and stressed that it made me resent working out, made me feel even more tired and stressed." So she was paying people for meal plans. She said, "I tried many meal plans, but they're only short term. And with no education behind them, they didn't make much sense." She did Weight Watchers and didn't leave a comment because it didn't help. And then here she leaves a comment. "Honestly, what I'm loving about this program is the positive changes I'm making in my life outside of just diet. And at first, I wanted to do this program because I wanted to lose a bunch of weight that I had recently gained. You warned me it would eventually be about way more than just the weight. You were right. I feel good. I'm doing things that I once loved and stopped doing. So that's the key, right? What you're going to see is a light bulb starts to go off in people's minds where they realize this is a mind, body, spirit approach. This is not a diet. Okay. So I like being around people again. I can actually have a conversation with someone at work without turning red. I'm teaching my family these new techniques. So think about it when you look at things from a cost versus an investment perspective, the difference is one of them continually grows. When you invest your money in something, you keep benefiting from it. When you buy something with your money as a cost, it typically only has a diminishing value. For example, if you bought a TV, yeah, it's lost value next year because there's a new one, right? So this person's turning what she's learned into it's an investment for her because now she's teaching all her family members these techniques, okay? So I'm really having an aha moment that this process is totally about a mind-body connection. So she uses the words exactly there. I think the work you do is amazing. You truly care and want to help, and it shows. What makes this different from any other program you join is the dedication that comes from you. It's not generic, it's actually tailored to you. You take so much of your time to answer everyone's questions on top of weekly training. You check in and challenge us to make sure the work is actually being done. Whereas any other group would give you the info and pretty much you're pretty much on your own and not held accountable. I feel like I've totally made the best investment in myself that was long overdue. The benefits from this are lifelong, which is great. And I want you to take away from that is the importance of addressing these issues not from a diagnosis perspective, but from a mind, body, spirit perspective. Okay. Now, when we want to create a morning routine, so bear with me, guys. I know it's 8 o'clock. I'm going to run maybe 10 more minutes if I can get through this. But there's a lot of information I want to share, so please be patient. I'm going to look to see if there's any questions. Hold on, there's some more. Okay, because I want to give you a time at the end to ask questions. Oops, what did I do here? Okay, what the heck just happened? Lost my page. The joys of a live broadcast. Why is this not playing? Hold on. All right, here we go. Just give me a second. Okay, so when creating a morning routine, these are some of the things that I do every single morning. And you might see a list of 7 things and think, I don't have an hour and a half to do this stuff. The reality is I use something like a really unique way of looking at things that I call health stacks. So I'll go through the things that I do most mornings. So one of the first things I do is enjoy the morning sun. So I try to get sun on my skin. For me, it's really easy because I have a dog. It means I have to get out regardless of the temperature, cold, doesn't matter. I have to walk him. I drink 25 to 30 ounces of water. I usually try to get almost a liter in right when I get up. I keep it at on my nightstand in a big bottle. Then I practice daily gratitude. So I also use a gratitude journal that I keep with a pen in it with the date written on it from last night, right on my nightstand. So as soon as I sit up, my journal's waiting for me. I leave it open to the page I need to write in, and I write down, I go through my daily gratitude. I practice joyful movement. And so remember, this isn't a workout, right? I can go through a couple of lunges, a couple of stretches, a couple of push-ups, And that is my joyful movement. And it might be on my walk as well, right? I practice intermittent fasting, something that, many of you are already doing in some way or form now. Now that's become very easy for me because I have, believe it or not eating in the morning made my life easier. So I never even think of breakfast unless it's a weekend. And even then I usually leave it till afternoon anyways. One of the things I love to do, which helps center me and is a great routine, is make my morning coffee. And I use a coffee that's called an adaptogenic coffee because it has mushroom spores in it. And it has, in particular, it's called reishi mushroom. But the term adaptogenic means it helps to allow my nervous system to adapt more to stress, right? So it lowers the impact of the stress on my day by making more resilience, allowing myself, there's many, many other factors, but this is why I decided to drink this coffee in particular. Now, when I do that, I also practice breath work and do meditation. Now, I might not do both at the same time, but what I wanted to teach you is you might look at that and think that that's a big chunk of time. But all of this can be done, almost all of it, every step within the same 10, 15 minutes. Because if I'm sitting and enjoying the sun and I'm practicing my breath work, I'm already fasting. It's not something I need to practice doing. I might drink my water, or sip on my coffee and be present and mindful of that moment and express my gratitude. All of these things you can stack together on top of each other. So you're using the same period of time to get all of these things done at the same time. So it doesn't take a big time investment, right? It takes dedicating your time to do these things. And what I always tell people is make these habits as consistent as the habit of brushing your teeth. And I always jokingly ask people, would you go to work without brushing your teeth? And the look on people's face is just pure disgust. Who would do that? Well, then why would you go to work without taking care of your mind, without putting positivity in here, right? But we do that, right? We every person we run into, we might already be frustrated and grumpy and angry, and we take it out on them. That's okay, but a little bit of bad breath is dangerous, right? It's just the way we are thinking and operating is from the wrong place. This is not needed. I skipped that. Oh no, the video. Let me see if this video will play. Nope, it's not gonna play right now. So I'm going to see if I can get back. So I brought up, I wanted to share a video that I think is really powerful. For me, it was actually a life-changing experience to get this video back. So what I did is I interviewed a bunch of people that I was working with, and I had no idea the impact on their lives that was taking place. And so I created this video, and then I had a video editor edit this from, each person had a 40-minute conversation to all of their conversations down into 4 minutes. And it doesn't look like, for whatever reason, it's going to work. So I will email a replay of this, and I'll attach a video link to that video so you can watch it. And if you weren't in the Facebook group, yeah, see, it's for some reason it's not going to load. That's okay, but I will do that afterwards. I'll send it individually to the people who registered for this. I'll send them the link. Now, what I want to do before we get into the question and answers is bring up my next screen. So if you're wondering, what are your next steps? How do you leverage this information? What do you do from this point forward? If you want to create the type of change that you've seen these people who are just like you, who started just like you, then what I have to offer you is very, very simple. If you click on this link, or you go to this link, you can also just email me, because everyone should have my email, or message me on Facebook. set up a time to have what's called a discovery session. And what we would do in this time, it lasts about 30 to 45 minutes, is I would send you some forms to fill out, and you would give them back to me. And I would have already reviewed these for the time that we set up to speak. And I would share with you what we can learn about your health from that data. And then from there, we would also look to see if working in this type of program is even suitable for you. And so typically this appointment costs $150. And because you've gone through this challenge and you showed up today and spent an hour and a half listening to this and trying to continue this learning, what I'm doing is giving that time to you for free. And so if you're here still listening, I don't know why someone wouldn't take this next opportunity. And the reason why you want to do that is because there's no better way to gain further insight into your own health than by getting this type of information, right? So I think there's probably 12 pages of questions you would need to answer on that form. And then we would go from there. Like I said, I always start with setting up the date, getting you the forms, and then I always tell people to give me the forms back 2 days prior to that date. And then we go from there. And what this would allow you to do is ask more questions about what's involved in this 10-week program. What things are you going to ask of us? What are some of the features that are included in it and the costs and so on? But this is really, really important. And I don't know why anyone wouldn't take advantage of it, because you save so much money. You have nothing but something to gain from spending that time. So what I want to do is allow you to ask some questions, whether it's something to do with the actual 5-day challenge, something that came up today, or a question you just haven't been able to answer. Ask away. I know I went through some of these questions already, but this is your chance to ask. And so you can either type it in or talk. I would rather just hear a voice, to tell you the truth. So anyone have any questions?
I had a question about the morning routine and the sunshine, and I have heard that before, but you had mentioned to not wear reading glasses.
Yeah.
So what happens if you wear glasses?
Well, you reflect the UVB light.
No, but like I wear glasses all the time.
Yeah. So when you take the time to say, let's say 15 minutes, you sit outside in the sun, you take your glasses off.
Okay, so you can't go walking because I fall.
Yeah, it depends how bad your vision is. If you have really bad vision, like my wife, then you stand still.
Right.
If you can see like a little bit, where you're not impaired by not having glasses, then you take them off. But in all honesty, like most of this, like for example, with my kids, I have them swing on the swing set facing the sun, right? If it was me, I sit on the deck with my feet in the grass facing the sun. So whether I'm wearing glasses or not really has no play there, right? It's not involved.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions?
Can you just go over again what you were talking about with like fiber in the morning? What's the best source of fiber? And then also like maybe what breakfast, lunch, and dinner should consist of?
Well, I think, what I would say is make your fiber sources from fresh vegetables first and foremost. So get away from things like muffins and baked goods, right? Because that's not the right type of fiber. But if you're eating things like carrots and cucumbers and celery and all types of like things like bell peppers, then that's the movement you want to make. That's the direction of movement you want to make. In terms of what specific foods, I mean, that's really hard to determine without knowing any more data about people. There is no one diet, right? So if I was to tell you what you should be avoiding, then it is, you definitely need to avoid things that I would say are highly, in terms of immune stimulating, or creating like what most people would have a sensitivity or an allergic reaction to, is things like grains and dairy. You get rid of those things. But to nitpick all these other things is, without someone's data, I wouldn't even suggest. I would never even go into that with someone, because we're way too different. For example, I could drink coffee late at night and go to sleep. My wife can't drink coffee after 1 in the afternoon if she wants any chance of going to sleep. That's just coffee, right? We have such genetic variability amongst each other that, you know, I would make a generalized statement as to what to avoid, but not necessarily these are how you structure breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Well, first of all, I think that the first thing I would say is, why are you eating breakfast? Who said to eat breakfast? Like, where did this concept of we need to eat in the morning come from? Like, break fast doesn't mean morning. This is just when you break your fast, right? This whole concept of we need to eat 3 times a day comes from the food industry, right? That's, who could tell me 100 years ago people ate 3 times a day? We didn't. We haven't been on this planet eating 3 times a day. And what I can guarantee you is we weren't eating 5 times a day. I have people that show up in my clinic eating 7 times a day. They're the sickest people I've ever met. And somehow people keep telling them more food is going to solve their problem. What are you going to eat 11 times a day? Right? And the reason why that's happening to these people is because their blood sugar keeps plummeting. So the solution is eat something sugary every 2 hours to get your blood sugar back up, so you don't croak, so you don't pass out. Right? That it doesn't mean that that is based off of any data, any science, or anything like that. It means that there's a lot of industries that tell you how to behave, and we just follow suit. Right? And it becomes so part of our society that it's a norm. Like eating 3 times a day is just normalized. Right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Did you fast? I didn't see whose name asked that question. Sorry. So I'm just going to ask. During this challenge, was it Melissa that asked that question?
Yes.
Yeah. Did you fast during the challenge?
I did the challenge late, but I have tried the last few days.
Okay. How'd you do with that?
Not so good.
In what way?
I don't know. I like junk.
Oh, so you just wanted to snack on things you shouldn't be snacking on?
Yes.
So I'll ask you a question. What was your why? Why did you do this challenge? Or why did you have to succeed at this challenge?
Pardon?
Why did you have to succeed at this challenge?
I don't want to say it in front of other people.
Okay, that's fair. But do you see how, like, if you don't have a lot of clarity around your why, and remember there's a difference between your why and your goal, then you know you can be quite content with eating junk, right? But you got to understand why you eat junk. So I'll give you an example of how our habit, like our mindset around food, can spiral out of control. Okay, so if you take a scenario where you have a mother and a child, like an infant or a young child, a toddler, right? And the toddler is crying. Maybe they hurt themselves, right? And mom's natural instinct is like, I want to soothe this child. I want to let them know they're okay, that they're loved. Everything is okay, right? If you're following along, then what might happen next is the mom might say, okay, well, I'm going to give you this. Let's say it's ice cream. Okay, here's your ice cream. You're going to feel better now, right? What the mom's doing is trying to soothe this pain and show love. The action is the right action. She wants to show love, but what we create is a very bad behavior, because as that's happening, what happens as a child repeats as an adult. And so when we become adults, we think that love is food, right? And so we start eating these things that we don't like, or not that we don't like, we start eating these things that cause us more pain, right? Because there's this emotional attachment to it as love. And so every time we're feeling upset, what do? What is the common phrase we hear in our society? Oh, it's just a treat. I was feeling down, so I ate a tub of ice cream, right? There's a lot of subconscious programming that takes place in our lives that has to be undone. And so when you say, I just like to eat junk, you have to ask, well, where'd that come from? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Nothing is by accident. Does anyone else have a question?
How much can all of this have to do with food sensitivities? Do you find that that's a big part of it too?
How much of all of what can do with food sensitivity? Sorry.
Well, like the whole how you're feeling and like improving your sleep, and you can do all these things, but if you're still not eating the right things, is that a big factor? Like,
Uh,
you know,
I think that there is a narrative in our, especially in the health sphere, that that's the order things should be done in. But I'll tell you, in the 10 years I've been doing this stuff, that's where I started. And that's not where the way it works in real life. I would have never got the results I've been getting over the last 5 years if I was still using that approach. And so what that means is, yes, there are some people who have very specific sensitivities, right? The only way you're going to uncover them is by testing them. But the reality is you, like, these words are thrown around, but they don't have any meaning to them, right? Someone says, oh, you're sensitive to this food. Well, why would you be sensitive to any food? Like, for me, what I would say is always ask why. Why is any one person sensitive to all of these foods? What you have to understand is the mechanism that creates sensitivity. So for you to have a food sensitivity, you have to have something called leaky gut. And so you can have leaky gut and you can spend all the money you want in the world taking protocols and supplements to fix your leaky gut. But what you're not going to realize is the major thing that opens up your gut lining is your level of stress. And so how do you make any change if you didn't fix the things that happened first? Right? In functional medicine, we always say, go as far upstream as you can, fix that thing first. Everything else after that will fix itself, because the body is self-regulating. So if you waste your time trying to figure out all your sensitivities, what I can tell you is they keep changing. They keep evolving if you don't fix the issues that cause the sensitivity, right? Because that's way too far downstream.
Right.
Yeah. And so that's why when you start taking away those things and start saying, well, like I was blown away to when I learned how impactful, or think of it like this. So when someone's under a lot of stress, there's this thing that happens where you start to get into a state called sarcopenia. What that means is your body starts tearing down muscle to create energy. Okay. So these people will get really skinny. Like, when I don't know if you've ever seen someone who did like Dr. Bernstein's diet. Did you ever see someone or know someone who did this? It's a really bad, but yeah, maybe you've even tried it yourself, right? But these people really didn't look healthy. They looked really sick. Their eyes would sink into their head. Their skin would sag, because what was happening is they were losing muscle mass. Okay. And when your body starts trying to create energy out of proteins, because it's not able to do it from carbohydrates and fats, its energy production is paramount. Everything becomes secondary to energy production. So what your body will do is start tearing down muscle, because when it breaks down your muscles into amino acids, it can make energy out of that. And so what happens is it breaks down smooth muscle. Smooth muscle is your skeletal muscle, like your biceps, your chest, your pecs, and your gut lining. Right? You see the connection?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's much, much bigger than a food sensitivity. And so the real work is, the most powerful work is taking control of your life and figuring out your food sensitivities. Trust me, I had lots. And so my journey started with, you know, gut issues that were so beyond control that I just stopped eating. That was my solution before I knew what I needed to do. Before I got the right help, it was like, I just can't eat anymore. Anytime I had to drive somewhere, I didn't eat. Never ate breakfast because I couldn't control when I was going to have a bowel movement. So it's too scary. Right. I did all the food sensitivity testing. I did that stuff. And, you know, the one thing that applied to me was I learned I have the genes for celiac disease. Right. Guess what I was eating every day?
Mm. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
You know, when we work with people in this program, we have a very specific diet we have them go on. But, you know, the best way to describe it is it's an anti-inflammatory diet. Right. But that's like, we talk about diet one time. So we have to move away from these things that it's your food. Food is important, but we as a society, we've placed way, way too much emphasis on it. I mean, if you're eating chocolate bars and pudding and donuts, like that's obviously that has to change, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then even within people who are eating relatively healthy, you can get into all types of things that are just never going to work. Right? More restricted, more restricted, more restricted, more restricted. And what happens is I've actually had people come into my office where they were telling me they were having allergic reactions to water now. So forget about their food. They can't eat anything and they can't drink water.
Right.
Okay. So you have to be very careful. Think of it like this. If you were, you know, that black tar you seal your driveway with?
Right.
Well, the instructions that you're supposed to follow is start on one end, go side to side and go all the way to the other end. And when you start getting really, really restrictive and pulling away all your foods, it's like you're going from the edges into the middle. Well, how do you get off the driveway? You paint yourself into the middle and then you're stuck.
Right.
Right? Because we're not working at the right areas. We're not working on the right parts of what we need to do.
Okay.
Does anyone have a question about our actual 10-week program? I'll be creating a webinar just for that program itself, but if you have a question about what's involved, you know, you could ask it now.
Can you give a short synopsis?
Yeah, so basically what we do is some of the information you've already learned over 5 days. Like I said, that's kind of a sneak peek at what the types of things you would learn. But it's much, much more in depth. And everything is action orientated. So what I do is on Mondays, for example, with the group that I'm working with now, I coach them Monday evenings. So every Monday night, there's a lesson to say, almost like kind of how we're talking now. It's done live. And I teach them a bunch of stuff. And then they have the week to start putting that stuff into practice, right? Every week has a different topic. So we might have the first one might be on nutrition and digestion. Then it might be on sleep. Then it might be on mindset. Then it might be on, you know, another topic. But we have 10 of these topics. Actually, there's about 12 of them. So I over deliver by giving 12 weeks of coaching instead of 10, right? And then what we do is we implement these changes, everything that individual. So if you are in this program, everything you need to succeed is given to you from the very beginning, and it's included into the cost of the program. So there's lots of things in there, lots of resources that I took enough time to select and curate, because what I wanted to do is, if you were going to buy something, I wanted to give you the resources to succeed by giving you the most impactful tool you could have. So for example, one of the things every person in this program gets is something called a heart math unit. It's called Inner Balance. And this heart math unit allows us to measure your heart rate variability. So this is a tool that you keep forever. Now the cost of this thing is $200 itself, right? But everyone starts with one in their box when they start. And we teach these people how to use it. Now this is a tool I use on every one of my NHL players that I work with. And so if you think about it, if these high-level athletes are willing to invest their time into this tool and learn how to use it, why aren't we? Right? If they have millions of dollars at stake, why aren't you learning it? Why isn't anyone teaching it to you? Because wouldn't it be more impactful to us? Because they already have relatively good health, right? They're the best athletes in the world. But they're always the differences.
They have more demands on their bodies.
Sorry?
Or they have more demands on their bodies, so
Yes,
they need to
have
do more.
more demands on their bodies. So, but think about it. They're always looking to improve a little bit more, right? That's the different mindset. So with us, a lot of us, including myself at one time, I just thought it was pointless. And I looked around at my peers and they all felt the same way as me, right? And until something changed inside myself, until for me, I wasn't going to change for me. And I don't hide that fact from anyone. For me, I was willing to stay the same and suffer until I realized that who's going to lose out the most. And this is the big aha moment that I hope, whoever's listening to this message, because this is being recorded, the aha moment isn't that you are suffering. The aha moment comes when you realize who else and what else suffers because you aren't living to your best. That's the scary question, right? So when I started realizing if I can't function and be happy, I can't put my energy into my children, and they're going to get the brunt of it, right? And then I have to deal with me knowing that I lost my cool and I said something I shouldn't have, or I didn't even show that I cared because I wasn't present today, right? Those things, when you start looking at, so for example, if I was still on that trajectory that I was on 10 years ago, would I be showing up for my community today?
Mm-hmm.
Not a chance in hell. It wasn't even on my radar. Like I was too afraid to even public speak. Right? So when you look at it, it's like, who loses? Who else suffers because we don't change our own lives and end the suffering there? Right? The rule that I always try to give people is you can only give what you have. Right? So the perfect place to start, think of it like money. If someone asks me for money, I can't give them any unless I have some. And so when it comes to our families and our friendships and maybe our coworkers, what is the one thing they require we give them? Love. And if we don't have that love for ourselves, you can't give it to them. It's just lip service. It's empty. You can only give what you have. And so the first thing you do is build your love by investing your time into yourself. And once you do that, it's very, very easy to start taking the next steps. It's very, very easy to start saying, I'm worth this. I deserve this. And you build and you build and you build.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Anything else?
How much is your program?
Good question. So the program itself, when we were doing it one-on-one, we were doing it for $2,200 for the 10 weeks. Now, what I did about a year ago, around the time COVID started is I moved it to a group program and I started doing it online. That allowed me to bring the cost of the program down to $1,500. So it's $14.99 plus tax. And like I said, everything you need to succeed in that program is given to you at the beginning. There's no, I'm not selling you, you know, after your 10 weeks that you need to buy supplements from me, or you got to buy, you know, I don't know, whatever else typically people associate with a program like this to keep succeeding. It's about your habits that you are taught. It's about how did you change your life. And so you'll notice that in each of those case studies or the comments that people from our actual program had posted in this group is what did they keep saying? Is after the program, they still kept losing weight. They still kept feeling better. There's no falling off a cliff, right? But again, it's understanding that you got to do the work, right? So we have to, as individuals, stop looking for someone to solve our problems or stop looking to collect information, because information never solved any problems. Applying information solves problems, right? And what that is, what that does is you take information and make it wisdom, because now you know how to use the information. And so when we started doing this in a group setting, the beautiful thing that's come from that is that the community supports itself. And the one thing that's really nice about this is you never are kicked out of the community. So I have people in this group that have gone through this program 2 years ago. And every week, the coaching calls, they can attend. And they can keep themselves accountable. They can still ask questions. They can still be involved and still be engaged, and they can support the new people and say, hey, stick with it. This is what happened to me. And you see this whole dynamic play out in this group where as this community keeps continuing to grow and continue to grow and continue to grow, you build this like, love for one another. And what I always tell people is, you have to share, right? You have to be involved for people to celebrate you. And that's what we've created, is a very, very safe place for that to take place. And so I have like a small little one-page website that goes through, all the things that are included in this program. The value that we've kind of put into that is way more, it's double of what we charge, put it that way. And so how I've structured this is to, like I said, everything that's in there is something that creates massive action. So for whether it's heart math, whether it's something I'm using to help stabilize your blood sugar so that we can lower your inflammation really quickly, and the tools keep building from there. And then it's all down to movement. How do we coach? How do you take action? And you'd be surprised. Like I said, I've seen some of the sickest people. I have another program that's 6 months long, and that program is much more detailed and involved, and it requires doing lab testing, very specific lab testing that gets done in the States. So these are all functional medicine labs. And to tell you the truth, I'm starting to see a shift where the people who I would have normally put into that bigger program are getting results that we might not have ever gotten. I don't know. But in this short 10-week span, they've changed their life. They don't need anything more than that. And so it's very, very powerful.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, well, I want to thank you, each and every one of you. I know that some people couldn't stay on. They had to leave at a certain time. But I wanted to say thank you, for taking this time, number one, not because you spent it with me, because you gave yourself this time. Okay, I hope you gained something from this. I hope that you've at least got some hope for the future, that you can change your life, that the life you've always wanted to live is still possible. And truly, when I put this Love Yourself to Health challenge together, it was all about creating that sense of love for yourself. So if you do something tonight, look yourself in the mirror and just say, I love you. I can't wait to go to sleep and wake up tomorrow a new person. And don't wait. Don't wait 2 years or 2 months or for, Mars and Jupiter to be in alignment. Every moment, just choose yourself. Okay. I hope you have an amazing night. I want to keep everything short, or not short, but I want to leave everything there. And we'll go from there. And if you have any questions, reach out to me. I'll email you a review of this, and I will try to add that video for the 4-minute video that wouldn't connect during this presentation. So have an amazing night. I send you all my positive energy, my love, my thoughts, and get some sleep tonight. Rest your mind. Spend some time, de-stressing, and wake up tomorrow refreshed. You'd be surprised what can happen in a short period of time. Okay. If there's no questions, I'll say bye.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
All right. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
You're welcome.